along that product market fit. You've got to get out there and take advantage of every introduction that you can get, and to talk to those potential customers or those potential, they may not actually be a customer. They just may be someone who knows something about that domain or has tried it before or has seen these things happen before, or a competitor even. But get out there and take advantage of every introduction you can get to have those talks and learn from them.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of the Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups in the 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the CEO and founder of Miller IP Law, where we help startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just reach out to us by going to strategymeeting.com, and we're always here to help. Now, today we have another great guest on the podcast, and it's Vance, and is it Reavie? Reavie. Close, but no, not quite, but close.
Just like great, right? Make it easy.
That's right. So Vance started out his life with a goal that he wanted to be prime minister. Hasn't made it there yet, but that was his initial goal. Went to school or went to university, got a political science degree and a master's, I think, in public administration, if I'm not wrong. Worked for the Treasury Department, was doing everything in print, and then he kind of found his first love with technology. And so from that started his first business as a startup. Went and did that. I think it was with web design and development, and it was at the height of the tech boom. Sold that business off. Timing was good at the height of the tech boom, and then continued to work in the tech consulting and I think it was banking and travel for a period of time. Did another startup with a business partner. Sold that off after 7 years. Went back to consulting. Did another startup. Took a break. Then went into creating an app, which is I think evolved into the Junction.ia that you're doing now today. So with that much as introduction, welcome on the podcast, Vance.
Great. Thank you very much. Great intro. Really appreciate it. I'm excited to be here today.
Absolutely. So excited to have you on. So I kind of gave a brief overview of your journey, but now take us back a bit in time to when you originally wanted to be the prime minister and how your journey started from there.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been fascinated by business and politics, and it's one of those things. I'm just addicted to what's happening in the political world around us all the time, and where things are going and the trends that are part of that. And so I always saw myself as being that politician. And but as I guess moved towards that career part of your life, I started realizing that I enjoyed being on the back end of things a little bit more, and understanding and working in policy areas, things that made a difference, and or I felt could make a difference, very tangible, very practical things. And that actually carried over. I think that's probably sort of an ethos that drives me, because as I got introduced into technology world, again, that same sort of what difference can I make? Can I have a practical, impactful, relatively quick difference on people's lives, their work lives in that case? That sort of followed me along from the political arena into the digital technical arena.
So now going, and we'll get to the technical arena in just a minute, but you went all the way through school. You got an undergraduate, you got a master's, and you went to work for the Treasury. So you were at least kind of getting into that politics realm and doing that, and you did that for a period of time. Now, what was the point where you said, okay, although I've always wanted to get into politics, or I wanted to be prime minister, I'm going to switch and be in tech instead? Was it just kind of happenstance? Was it, hey, I saw a good opportunity? Or kind of how did you make that transition from where you originally were setting off to do with what you got with your degree to what you were doing as far as business?
I think the driver was the project I was on at the time. We were looking at, we were printing just reams and reams of paper and books and stats and information about government, progress and policies and spending and budgets and all these sorts of things. And there's all this talk of innovation and talk of change. And we were certainly innovative for what we were doing at that time. But I guess I just had an enormous impatience, because I could see how the whole digital economy was rolling out at that time and the immediacy of things. And I didn't want to spend years in a project to get digital. I wanted to go and be digital now. I didn't want to, have endless meetings about how we'd get there. I actually wanted to do it. I wanted to be on it. So I did some retraining at that point, but I realized my skill sets that I'd learned from being at Treasury and certainly in the university was that ability to really understand things and get a way of getting around things quickly and understanding things quickly, and then to organizing those approaches. So it lended, I guess, to becoming a project manager in that way. And with that, really quickly, I kind of found my fitting that as a project manager, I could translate sort of the needs and wants of the client or the end user with what was, the people building or creating or the doers of it. And I really, really enjoyed that space. And that's what I guess triggered me to go, you know what, I'm going to be, I'm going to love being in the digital world because things happen quick, number one. You can see the results really quick, quickly, but also there's a need for that person that can play that bridge, that can talk the technology role, but also translate that to the business people that need to use this technology and get ahead with it or find ways to, improve their processes, save some money, improve their revenue, whatever it is. And that's sort of just that's how it evolved from that point.
No, it definitely makes sense. So now as you get into that and you say, okay, I want to be the one that's building technology, have the impact, be able to do that as opposed to kind of waiting for others to do it if they ever do. And if it's anything like the US, to be able to get anything done in government takes 20 times longer than what if you do it privately or do it yourself, private industry. So you decided to do that for a period of time. As you get into technology and start to kind of work that out, what was the kind of the first business you got into? I think you said it was web design and development. Yep. And those type of things.
Yeah, so I'd moved to Wellington, New Zealand. I'd been an exchange student in New Zealand when I was a kid at 15 for a year. And I loved it and I knew I wanted to go back. And so I just saw an opportunity when I got there. I had a lot of friends and contacts there. And so a business partner and I, or a friend of mine and I, we became business partners. She had already been working in the web industry. I had as well in some contracting. And we thought, we want to create a web design and development company to help businesses, get their products online and do all that wonderful things that they can do with those e-commerce sites and engagement sites and with government clients and things like that as well. And it was just she was an expert in the internet and a leading figure at that time as well. And I came with my project management and business background, and it was a really good marriage from that point of view and getting a business up and going fast.
No, and that definitely makes sense. So now you get, so you figure that out. You kind of say, hey, I want to be in technology. I want to be able to figure it out. I want to be kind of part of it and be able to build it. You build up the business and you did that for a period of time. And then what kind of, and that was kind of up to the point of the height of the tech boom or, before the bubble burst, so to speak. As you did that, how did you then decide, what made you decide to sell and kind of what did you do after you sold?
I think, there was a couple triggers on the time to sell. Like we were very young, we were in our 20s and that whole thing, you think you know everything then. And, there's something you can learn, but you've got a lot of moxie and confidence then and you think, so we realized quite quickly as we were growing and we grew really fast. We were getting these offers from consulting companies that were trying to move in this area. And so we did take advantage of that because, for both of us at that age, we could see our lives were going to go in different directions and that it just was a good opportunity to take us up to that next level, get money, obviously the sale, it gave us both some money and that would free up options for you in life to do what you want to do next. And that really, I guess, resonated for both of us. So we took advantage of that. And, and also we could see where the technology was going. We knew we needed to have a stronger and bigger back office function, more developers. And you either have to go out there and get a lot of investment to make those investments, and then they pay off as you get those new clients, or you have to bootstrap it the whole way or stay small. And I think at that point we didn't really know how to get big at that time, and there's a bit of an art to that, right? And so we didn't really know how to scale at that time. We didn't really know how to get investors in or sell part of the company for promissory notes or investment, whatever it is these days that is so easy. But then it wasn't as clear and as common. So I don't think we knew how to scale and make it big. So it just was good timing.
No, it definitely makes sense. And that's always, one is always in the timing of, hey, you've reached to a point. And a lot of times with a business, a lot of times you'll reach to a point where, hey, we've kind of built this, or we're hitting a bit of the glass ceiling type of a thing where we've kind of, there's different individuals. It's interesting as you kind of look and study businesses that some people are meant or wired or geared towards doing the startup and small business and figuring it out and getting it up and going and doing it, but aren't necessarily it's not the same skill set as really growing the business into a huge thing. And some people can do both. Some people love both. Some people are saying, hey, I just really love the small side of the small business. And so I'm not going to work, or I don't want to get into that, having to deal with, or hundreds or, tens or hundreds of employees and doing a big business. I just like the small kind of figuring out aspect. So definitely makes sense. And so now as you sold the business, as you're saying, okay, we sold it off and we're transitioning, I think you went into consulting for a period of time. What made you go into consulting as opposed to doing your own business or but starting a new business or something of that nature?
The drive for the consulting side was really wanting to do deep dives in a variety of different sectors and see how they were using innovative technologies to transform their businesses. So I was really interested in where banking was going, because obviously they've been a leader in online banking, and I wanted to be part of that. So I worked at a major bank. Travel, the same thing. I mean, there was so much change happening there. With all of that moving online and that taking over the traditional role of the agents. So again, I wanted to get my feet wet there, and government as well. I mean, the big spenders in technology, and again, my government background, that touches everybody's lives. And the more that's digitized, renewing your license online or getting those permits online or whatever it is, those sorts of things, I wanted to really dig deep and learn the ropes on all of those areas. So I had some strong sectoral understandings of what the needs, what the product is, how to make a product fit for those markets. And so that consulting was really valuable for me. And then, I went on with a new business partner at that time to then create a web hosting company and specialize in hosting, high volume transactions and e-commerce sites and high volume engagement sites and things like that. That just, that immediacy and speed was so important.
All right. No, definitely makes sense. And so now you do that, do that consulting gig for a period of time and, or kind of go down that route. Now, as you kind of transition into doing another startup, what made you decide to, move back away from consulting or otherwise say, hey, I want to go do another startup? Or was it, hey, had a great idea or somebody approached you or you were kind of getting that itch again, or kind of how did you decide, okay, now that I've taken a break, so to speak, done consulting, step back from a startup life, now I'm going to get back into it, and kind of, because you did that a few different times, right?
Yeah, 3 different times. Yeah, every time I have this little retirement period after or whatever. And the third one, I had a fairly significant retirement period after I, moved to Latin America while I was selling the business, or while we were selling the business, and then spent some time, living in Costa Rica and just sort of enjoying a retired life. But every time I do this process, I find I get bored really quick. I mean, I'm always fascinated by what's happening. So I just need to be busy. I need a project. I got to have something that I got to get my, sink my teeth in and get going on. And, so I did some work in, I built some houses and sold houses. I thought I got to try that. So, but of course, technology called me, and I had some ideas that I'd formulated, and that led to, what Junction AI is today. And I'm fascinated by data because, as we all know, the growth in data and how it affects every system now and every technology implementation and how it works. And, it just seemed to be an area where I could see a really big difference could be made. And it was just interesting. I found it fascinating and interesting. I mean, all the way back in university, I remember doing those stats courses where you're analyzing data and trying to figure out the connection between whatever and this. And I enjoyed it then, but I didn't realize that, 20 years later, wow, I wish I would have paid a lot more attention and probably done some more advanced courses in that area. So I just went in for the practical reasons. I thought, you know what, I'll do some online stuff, but I'm just going to get in there myself and get really practical about this and learn about data. And so Junction AI really did start as an app before that. That was a B2B2C app for marketers. That was about, looking at data and how we can use data to understand everybody's personal preferences. If I'm at the corner of 2nd Street and 3rd Avenue or whatever it is, I want to know that the stuff being marketed to me is very specific to what I want to do, care about, want to see, want to engage in. I don't want all the rest of the stuff. And we knew that data had the answer for that. And it was just like an addiction. I got going into it, and then Junction AI happened. I didn't go into this with this idea of becoming an AI person. I never even thought of it really. But as we looked at this data, we just thought there's a wonderful technology tool, AI. Wow, machine learning. Let's start using that and see what we can do.
No, it definitely makes sense. So now as you kind of say, okay, we've got, an idea. I think, having more specific marketing or intelligent marketing and kind of based on the individual and maybe where they're located or what their preferences are, and kind of taking, that targeting to the next level in a good way, in the sense of rather than just blasting people with a whole bunch of ads that they're not going to care about or that aren't relevant to them, or, that aren't going to have that return, to make it a more specific or tailored experience to each individual. So you get that going. And as you kind of, figure that out, how was it that, you know, as far as getting the company up and going, having done a couple startups and selling them and doing consulting and doing another startup and that, doing this last round, has it been one where it's been easy and it's been a hockey stick right straight up, or has it been kind of back and forth and up and down and figuring it out and pivoting, or kind of how's it gone?
You know, it's a bit of both, because this is the first time I'd gone into it with the idea that I would, you know, bring investors into this company. The other ones, they were bootstrapped and self-funded and approached it that way. This one, I knew I wanted to move a lot faster. I knew that, you know, looking at the data world and the AI world especially, these are things that take a little bit more effort, especially with a SaaS product like we are. You do need to invest more up front because all your costs are up front. And you know, it's hard to bootstrap that. You have to build that product up before you can start selling any access to it. And so this one was a different one. It was one where I had to go back to almost school in that sense and learn, well, how do I go get investors? How do I make myself into that brand and that company that investors will want to jump in and be part of, and at the same time build a product that customers want to buy and, you know, and engage with. So we did an accelerator called Blue Startups in Hawaii, and I know it's just a horrible place to go do business and learn about business,
Oh,
right?
terrible. And who would want to do that?
Everyone felt so sorry for me spending 3 months in Hawaii at an accelerator. But, you know, Blue Startups is a great experience. So I learned a lot about, you know, what do you do when you want to open an investor friendly company, and what are the basics that you have to set up even in that, because it's different than when you're doing it a lifestyle or a bootstrap company. And so that was a big change for me and a big difference too, and learning how to bring that money in, and then how to spend, you know, to keep running really super lean, because we are, but also making those investments count.
So now you did that, and, you know, kind of had a mixture of both, and that kind of brings us a bit up to where you're at today. Where do you see kind of the next 6 to 12 months going for you? How does that look, or what's that direction looking like?
Well, I mean, as you know from your own experience too, product market fit is everything. And I've learned a lot about that too. So what we've really seen over the last year, especially with the pandemic and the impact, but as we started working with marketers in this data, we really saw a lot of opportunity on the prediction side, and helping marketers get more accessible on-demand information. And so that actually changed how we approached our business a little bit too. We realize that there's a lot of value in the data, and marketers have more data than just about anybody else in an organization, but they don't have the ability to harness it and make, you know, to use it really quickly. So we started, we started more on the idea of the personalization side of things, and we tested that out, but we realized quickly that the underlying infrastructure for really good personalization was, well, what's your creative saying for you? Do you know what the audience wants? Like, what's in demand? What are their interests? What are their behaviors? And then does your advertising creative even reflect that to engage them in the first place? You know, you're not going to make that e-commerce sale if that image doesn't actually engage your audience. So we really, you know, we did a bit of a pivot then, and that product market fit, we kept working on it. And so really over the next 12, 16 months, we see our opportunity mostly to be, growing in that platform sense, from the product management systems out there, the advertising platforms out there, to, integrate straight into them. Of course, we do work directly with brands as well, and agencies, but integrate into those platforms so that marketers have those on-demand predictions and insights from the AI as they're doing their work within their workflow. So they're not having to go to an IT department and go, oh, I need to book a data scientist or an analyst for some work. And, 3 weeks later, they get this person. Like, they need this today.
No, and I think that definitely makes sense. So, well, now that kind of gives us kind of how you got to where you're at, and then a little bit of where you're headed. It's a good transition to always jump into the last or a couple questions I always ask at the end of the podcast. And just as a reminder, before we jump into those, we're also going to talk, do the bonus question. We're talking a little bit about intellectual property. So for those of you that are interested in hearing that question, make sure to stay tuned after the end, or after we wrap up the normal podcast. But as we jump to the normal or last couple of questions I asked, first question always is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what did you learn from it?
I don't know if there was a worst business decision, but there were decisions I made that weren't informed like they should have been, or I didn't, I guess one of my worst first decisions was not paying for the professional advice. And this was, again, when I was in my 20s and I didn't know any better. A friend of a friend's an accountant, or a friend of a friend's a lawyer, or whatever it is, right? And you do the best you can thinking you're saving money and they're giving you good advice, but you really can't, you can't replace getting the proper, professional advice. And it may take you interviewing, like I interviewed lawyer in this latest one, I interviewed a variety of lawyers before I decided which lawyer I wanted to work with. And things like that. So you have to put the time and effort into getting the right advisors and the right people and the right professionals to give you the right advice, because it might cost you a little bit up front, but boy, oh boy, that's going to save you a lot of trouble, headaches, and money in the future for the mistakes that you could have made. So I didn't know that back in my 20s. I know now, and I know the difference it makes.
No, and I definitely agree in the sense that, you know, too often, but it's understandable to start up or small business saying, hey, I don't have the money, or I can figure this out, or I can Google it, or I do it myself for any number of reasons. And sometimes, occasionally that's true, but a lot of times what you end up doing is you either get half-baked advice or wrong advice, or you think you don't do it how you should. And then you either end up spending more time figuring that out, catching it up, correcting the issues. And if you'd spend a bit more of that time up front to get the expertise, get that information, get that knowledge, it would save you a lot of time in the long run. So
exactly. Like, do your own research, of course. Don't go in there dumb. Don't ever go in dumb. Do your research. But yeah, do get those professionals involved.
All right. I definitely agree with you. So now let's jump to the second question, which is, if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what'd be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
It's along that product market fit. You've got to get out there and take advantage of every introduction that you can get, and to talk to those potential customers or those potential, they may not actually be a customer. They just may be someone who knows something about that domain, or has tried it before, or has seen these things happen before, or a competitor even. But get out there and take advantage of every introduction you can get to have those talks and learn from them. And you're not going out there to push your solution. You're not going out there to show them a demo. You're there to hear what their challenges are, what they want to do, what would affect their job, what would make their business better, whatever it is, right? You've got to really listen, and it's not just once. You don't just go out there and do those interviews or those meetings and then think you've nailed it. Go build, go start spending money on the tech, whatever it is, right? You have to constantly be out there doing that. And for founders, you get a lot of different founders, as I'm sure you know. Some are more technical, some are more the business development. We all have our own skill set, but it's really important that all those founders get out there and do that customer investigation and that research, because it's going to make a big effect. And you can't do everything they're asking you for, but you're going to pick up the cues of where your product roadmap needs to go, so that you're going to have demand when you can afford to deliver that piece of the product or whatever it is. But yeah, spend time in your networking. You can't replace it.
No, and I think that too often you take your network for granted, or you don't, you have a lot of resources, a lot of people, and a lot of, people that are, a lot of times people are willing to, provide a bit of feedback or their help or assistance or lend an ear or give you that. And if you'd only utilize your network, and yet too often you're too bashful or shy, or think, oh, I don't want to bother them, or it's going to be an intrusion, or it's going to affect our relationship. When most of the time they're saying, yeah, should have reached out. I'm happy to chat with you for a few minutes or help you out.
You're spot on there. I've been blown away by the generosity of my network, but then the people they've introduced me to in their networks. Everybody has been more than happy to have that coffee or have that phone call or that meeting. And then often a second and third, even though I didn't, I thought, wow, I'm really imposing on them. But no, they've actually been, I've been so thankful for the generosity of so many, business people and communities who have helped me and given that time. So get out there and make those connections and listen and learn.
We'll definitely agree. Well, awesome. Well, as we wrap up, before we jump to the bonus question, I want to say thanks for coming on the podcast. It's been fun and a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners, if you have your own journey to tell and you want to be a guest on the podcast, feel free to go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. Two more things. One, as a listener. One, if you make sure to click subscribe in your podcast player, so when all of our awesome episodes come out. Two, also leave us a review so new people can find out about us as well. Last but not least, if you ever need any help with patents, trademarks, or anything else with business, feel free to go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat. So with that, now we get a transition to what one of the points, I love the whole podcast, but it's always kind of fun. I always am the one that's asking the questions and, talking about your journey. And now it's kind of gets an opportunity to flip the tables a bit and, ask a little bit about, or have you ask me a question and, or talk a little bit about my area of expertise, which is going to be on the patent side. So with that, turn it over to you to ask, what is your top intellectual property question?
Yeah, I guess for me, it's really understanding how I know, or one, I guess preparing and what do I need to do to get to that position where I can go talk to someone like yourself or, you know, an expert in this area. What do they need from me to understand whether there is an IP, you know, opportunity with what I'm doing? Like, what am I potentially patenting, or what can I patent? And what do I need to have? Like, what documentation or diagrams? Like, what is it I can do at the very beginning, or as I'm in this product journey and development journey, to start building up that corpus of information? So when I do talk to an expert like yourself, they can look at this and go, yeah, you do have opportunity, or there's value in this, or yeah, you can pitch this to your investors as a patentable opportunity. So how do I prepare the groundwork?
That is like a 2 or 3 hour answer, but
I know, it's not fair.
I'll condense it to at least a few thoughts as to how you might propose. First thing is to, you know, the more information, the better as an attorney. Usually if you come in prepared, and that can be everything from, you know, a patent is for a, you know, something that has a utility, a functionality, it does something. So if it's a patent and you're looking at, hey, I'm creating an invention or a widget or something else, do your homework and, you know, get some of your documentation together. What is my invention? How does it work? What have others done? Kind of what is, you know, what is unique about mine? What am I trying to solve? And I wouldn't do an extensive amount of research, but take 5 or 10 minutes and actually just Google it online, you know, and do a Google search, because it's shocking how many times I'll have people come in my office. So there's a client, we'll have a meeting and they'll be like, I've got this great invention. It's going to change the world. And I'm like, oh, and they explain it to me. I'm like, you know, it seems like I've seen that, or it seems like that's probably already been done. And we'll spend 5 minutes and say, yep, looks like there's already it out there, you know, and then the conversation really gets is, okay, if it's already out there, are you doing something different? Are you doing something unique? But you need to kind of know what's out there and do a bit of homework, but come in prepared. Same thing with a trademark or a brand. Hey, have you done and look and see, is anybody else using this brand? Is a URL available? Because even if you get the brand and then you want the website, you may not be able to get it, and you do a little bit of homework. So most of that is just really, as a general, do a little bit of homework and then gather as much information as you have, and then go and talk with the attorney. And they're going to give you some guidance, because every situation is different. If it's an invention that you're needing, you know, help on, they're going to walk you through, hey, it looks like you're too early on, you know, haven't developed it far enough, or hey, you're behind the 8 ball, let's hurry and get you caught up, or whatever that is. And same thing with, you know, trademark. They're going to say, hey, it looks like we can help you out, and this is what I suggest. So as a general rule, do a bit of homework, spend a few minutes, so you're not just going in and not having done any homework. And then second, gather as much of the information is. Last thing I would do is also kind of, you know, going into saying, hey, I've got a business, what kind of intellectual property, is probably going to be a very broad question. Isn't going to, they'll give you a good answer. And I've had those conversations, and we still help you out. But what's the most productive is look and see what is the core of your business. Are you a product business? And hey, a patent is really going to be important to you because you want to protect the new, whether it's software or hardware and, you know, electronics or anything else. But look and say, okay, this is really the core of our business. This is where we want to focus on, versus, hey, are we a brand business? And, you know, brand, and we really, what we do really well is we are great at customer service, and we market better, and we reach people, and we have a better story to tell. And yeah, our product's about the same as what's out there, but our brand is awesome. Or it's, hey, we came up with the world's in the next best book, and it's going to be the next Harry Potter or Tom Clancy or whatever it is, and we want to make sure we protect that because we're going to write a really great book, or we've already written it. So kind of whatever it is. So takeaway is, 1, do your homework. 2 is to come in prepared. And then 3, kind of give some thought as to what is the core of your business, or what do you really want to protect, or what's important to you. If you go into an attorney with those 3, you're going to be above most of the people that walk in their door, and it's going to make for the most productive conversation, and also give you kind of the best direction or guidance as to where to go.
Awesome. Good advice. I appreciate it.
So awesome. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up the podcast. If you or any of the listeners ever have any other questions, as I've already mentioned before, go to strategymeeting.com, and we're always here to help and answer questions and make sure to get you taken care of. Otherwise, thank you again, Vance, for coming on the podcast. Fun. It's been a pleasure, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Great. Thank you very much, Devin. Really enjoyed our talk today.